give you a kiss if you drive me to college. You say, that would be nice. I'm walking a walk. When Michael O'Leary and Steve Jobs try to tempt you with their cheap flights and their shiny cafes, just say, you know what, Mike, I'd rather stay with you and Steve, I'm really happy to stick with what I can't. It's not that hard. How hard is it to all consume things like there's leftovers in the fridge? How hard is it to use less central heating and more human? You know, when things don't need to be on, how hard is it to plug out? Well, there's one great thing I love steak. Steak, onion, steak, sauce. But I also love my gorgeous vegetarian girlfriend. So everybody's on me. So how hard is it to do these three things? Well, if you don't want your self-esteem to look like this, or your world to look like this, then it's pretty easy.
It's actually my favourite bit coming up right now. I think that's a bit slightly Pixar-esque in our dreams, anyway. So this idea about creativity is, our view, creativity is, I suppose, an incredibly sort of powerful, somewhat magical force, in all its different dimensions in our lives, and art and culture and so on. But particularly from the point of view of behaviour change in people's lives, we felt, coming from the backgrounds we did, that actually, if you think about it, there's an incredible force of creativity every day that's deployed, if you like, pushing people towards unsustainable behaviour. Not because it's part of some, massive global conspiracy. It's just the way that our economy and society has evolved post-industrialisation, that many of the things that we are encouraged to do are in fact deeply unsustainable. And the resources at their disposal are pretty prodigious. So you have, advertising and marketing, design, R&D, innovation, huge forces and resources that are effectively telling us we should live a certain way, and we need things and should do things that actually are part of the problem. And the issue for us was that the other side of the argument seemed to us to be a little bit weak by comparison. It's a bit like a sort of a crap magic trick. And that, albeit very well-meaning, a lot of the NGO work, which is absolutely fantastic, when it came to communication, a lot of it didn't really match. It wasn't an equal and opposite force, if you like. So from a consumer point of view, if you're faced between a choice with the Apple Store on Fifth Avenue and a sort of cutting-edge temple of modern consumerism, or the proposition that you should go back to a candle in a cave, which is really, I think, the way a lot of people feel about sustainability, it's not really a fair fight. So I think a lot of the things we try and do with Green Thing, albeit obviously with limited resources by comparison, but is try to tell that other side of the story, to try and actually use the same tools of creativity to plant ideas in people's heads that inspire them to think differently about how they might actually live their life and all the different rewards that they can get from that. So as an example, take something like driving and walking versus driving, which is one of our actions. It's about walking more, driving less, or using other more sustainable forms of transportation. An enormous amount of design goes into cars. So, cars aren't just vehicles that are manufactured to get you from A to B. They are symbols of your status and identity and personal freedom. They say a lot about you in terms of, the fashion and who you're seen with. Speed, music actually, before that, is a very interesting thing. Music and driving are two really powerful creative forces, where really drive time radio, you could argue, was sort of invented for this idea of cruising down Route 66. Perhaps less so in England, but it's again, the idea of putting your foot down the accelerator and having a soundtrack to that. Speed is really important because the idea is that if you're successful in life, you're really busy, and if you're busy, you need to get somewhere bloody quickly, and therefore, of course, you need a machine that's going to go from 0 to 60 in 0.3 of a second or whatever. And finally, there's the sort of mythology of adventure and discovery, and this idea of road trips and so on. So there's quite a powerful set of creative forces, if you like, or creative associations, psychological associations that have been created using creative ideas that have bound people to cars and driving as a really, really integral part of living. So we thought, well, how might you tell the other side of this story? Some interesting reference points. Copenhagen is obviously a very interesting city where you look at this combination of, if you like, usability and desirability. From a usability point of view, Copenhagen has, I think it's 35 or 37% of people commute to work each day on bicycles because they have dedicated bike lanes, but dedicated traffic systems. It's easy to rent bikes and so on and so forth. So there's a whole load of infrastructure changes that have been made that actually make it easy to cycle, and one can't underestimate that. So that's the usability side of it. It's actually easy to use a bike in that city. But in terms of desirability, there's a blog called Copenhagen Cycle Chic, which is basically rather beautiful Danish people on bikes. But it's rather effective, because what it says time and time again is actually there's a whole lifestyle associated with cycling, and it's really cool. It's what people who kind of know about the right way to live do, and it's sexy and it's beautiful and it's fashionable and it's clever and interesting. And so it's a useful reference point of, I think you need both those two forces to make something take. You need the infrastructure change and the products, but you also need the desire for the behaviour change itself. Another example for mobility might be MBT shoes, which are a very interesting type of shoe in the sense they've been engineered for better usability, but they also are packaged and delivered with desirability. So they are actually ergonomically better to walk in. They're better for your spine and your posture and your general sense of health and well-being. They are a better device, product for walking. But equally, they of course say something about you, and they speak to your sense of identity and the personal expression and the things that you want to signal to the world about the choices that you've made. One of the things we did at Green Thing, where we looked at the drive time, the soundtrack to driving music, and we thought, why isn't there a soundtrack to walking? So we came up with the world's first Walkcast, which is a bunch of musicians on the Big Chill label all wrote tunes for us at 105 BPM, which we decided was the optimum walking pace, walking round Narish's kitchen at about 3 in the morning. And they all wrote these 105 BPM tunes, and we got someone to mix them together into an hour-long soundtrack. So it's a free podcast, or Walkcast as we like to call it, which you can download and listen to while you walk. And again, it's a sort of an interesting sort of creative idea that slightly reframes the way that you might think about walking and the pleasure that you can get from it. And we also made this short film, which was designed to show you that actually to combat this sense of adventure, that actually walking is probably the most adventurous thing you could possibly choose to do.
You know, said the man, rather than drive today, we're going to walk. And so he walked. And as he walked, he saw strange and wonderful things he would not otherwise have seen. A deer with a fish leg, a flying motorcycle. A serious walk. And then he stopped. Walking in front of him was her. The woman who as a child had skipped with him through fields and broken his heart. Sure, she'd aged a little. In fact, she'd aged a lot. But he felt all his old passion for her return. Ford, he called softly. That was her name. Don't say another word, Bessie, she said, but that was his name. I know a tent next to a caravan exactly 300 yards from here. Let's go there. Make love in a tent. Ford undressed. She spread one leg and then the other. Gussie entered her boldly and made love to her rhythmically while she filmed him because she was a keen amateur on top of her. The earth moved for both of them, and they lived together happily ever after. And all because he decided to walk that day.
So a couple of other examples that I'll close with. Hopefully all the road signs were suitably visible, but you can see that on our site if you want to have a look at it again. Consumerism is we haven't got time to get into that to do it justice, but I'm sure that will be a topic that comes up through the day, which is that if you in the reduce, reuse, recycle chain, the reduce part, do you actually need to buy these things in the first place? And we thought there was something quite interesting about this, and so we decided to create a product which was the most sustainable product in the world, and it's called Nothing. And so we decided it was a bit of satire to tell people, to market it very, very heavily about why you should buy nothing, and it was the best thing since sliced bread. And we created a site called Amazero where you could buy nothing, and